Well, welcome everybody to the inaugural episode of What's New in Charlotte Business Podcast. I am the main host of the show, Austin Murray, one of the co-founders of Charlotte Connects. I'm also the marketing director for Sykes and Company Accounting. I'm actually sitting here with the greatest mortgage broker in Charlotte, North Carolina, Chris Bushnell with Chris Bushnell Mortgage. Chris, thanks for jumping on.
Appreciate you, Austin. I didn't know this was the inaugural episode. What an honor.
Yeah, it is. It's the inaugural one. Um, so basically, what we want to do with this podcast is all about reframing and reshaping the Charlotte business scene. A lot of people that are moving to Charlotte, they come here, they think finance, they think banking. But when you actually get into the Charlotte business scene a little bit more, you actually learn that the net is very wide and very deep. And so what we want to do is we want to highlight people from all different sectors, some of the Charlotte business leaders and Charlotte business entrepreneurs, and learn exactly like what exactly are they doing, how was their journey to Charlotte, and kind of just get some interesting best practices or some tips that are maybe unheard of. So I guess we'll start with, first of all, tell us who you are, your background, and your journey to Charlotte, how you got here.
Who am I? What's my background? How did I get to Charlotte? Yeah, so like you had mentioned, I'm Chris. Who am I? How deep do we want to get? Who am I?
Well,
uh,
let's kind of go with who you are. Let's kind of go with your background in mortgage lending and kind of where all that started.
yeah, so I actually moved to Charlotte from Buffalo, New York, go Bills, in 2020, and I moved here to become a loan officer with a really big bank here in Charlotte. And so I started my mortgage career at the same time that I moved to Charlotte in
Mhm.
2020. I went on my own in February of 2022, so I'm actually on the 8th.
You're coming up, man.
February 8th is my 3-year anniversary
There
of
you go.
so it's been a ride, man. If anybody follows real estate, it's definitely been a pretty crazy market these past couple of years, and
Hmm.
I've got to experience the good, the bad, the ugly. I've got to help a lot of families become homeowners, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So when you moved here from Buffalo, were you already in the mortgage space, or did you get into the mortgage space when you got to Charlotte?
No, I used to work in tech in Buffalo.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I worked for a few tech startups, and and I had a friend here who lived in Charlotte who worked in mortgages at a big bank, and the guy recruited me for like 6 months. And actually, the company that I was working for, actually they went out of business.
Mhm.
Actually, two in a row, companies went out of business. So, at the time I was thinking, man, the startup and the tech companies are
Yeah.
fun, and it's all new stuff, but there really wasn't all that stability. And so I jumped from that to probably the most stable thing you could be, which is working at a big bank here in Charlotte.
Hmm.
And then I made a complete career shift and became a loan officer.
Wow, interesting. How has really interesting background. How has the Charlotte market kind of changed from when you first got here to where we are now in 2025?
Yeah, this place is growing like crazy, man.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
it's like 140 some people every single day
It's a
moving
lot.
to it. You're talking like 45,000 people a year move here. You,
Mm.
you can't really drive two blocks without seeing some construction somewhere.
Mm.
So although it was already growing when I moved here in 2020, it's continued to grow, and I'm actually seeing most people who I meet are like me from New York or maybe from Florida or California, and all moving here for a different reason. It's a great quality of life. The economy in Charlotte is amazing. We do have a lot of big major companies here, and certainly the weather. As much as I love Buffalo, weather beats Buffalo just by a little bit.
That's right. That's right. The weather beats Buffalo, but our football team does not. Our
Yeah, and
football
the Bills,
team
the
does.
Bills do play the Panthers next
We
year.
do. Yes, we
Probably,
do.
probably going to demolish them, but hey, we'll have a good time.
That's right. What would you say is what would you say is your top pieces of advice for anyone moving to Charlotte? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but So I'm a young professional. I really want to get out there. I want to meet new people, maybe make new friends. What would be your top three pieces of advice for that person?
Great question. Yeah. So when I moved here, it was during COVID, right? So it made it a little bit more difficult. But there was a point in time where I was thinking, man, maybe Charlotte's not for me. I didn't really know
Interesting.
anybody. I wasn't meeting people. I didn't really get to explore the city too much because I work so much. And I think a lot of people who move to Charlotte are professionals, and they probably do have a high demanding job that takes a lot of their time.
Yeah.
And I'd encourage those people just to get out, go to groups, networking groups, social groups, go on Eventbrite, go on Meetup, get out, make the time, right? Even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week where, after work you go out and, grab some beers with people or go to an event if you don't drink, that's totally cool too. But just get out of your comfort zone, meet people, explore the city too, right? There's so much to explore in Charlotte. Every neighborhood is totally different, right? So if a lot of people move here and they move to South End, right, which is typically the where everybody
Right.
moves to, but then they miss these awesome neighborhoods such as Noda, Plaza
Mm.
Midwood, Elizabeth, Chantilly, Camp North End area, and there's so many cool different spots, and I think that a lot of the times, earlier when I moved here, South End is fun, and I think that's a great stage of life for people to go to, maybe in your 20s. But it really just wasn't meshing well for me, which is another reason why I thought, man, maybe this really isn't for me. And then I discovered those other neighborhoods like Plaza Midwood, probably my favorite neighborhood. I do like Noda as well. I'm more of a North Charlotte guy. And I'm glad I discovered those neighborhoods because now I love Charlotte and I could really never see myself leaving.
Yeah, don't give up on Charlotte. Those other neighborhoods, even like north of Charlotte, Lake Norman is a beautiful
Yeah,
area. But just some of those pockets, those areas of Charlotte outside of South End. I know everybody loves South End. Everyone loves Sycamore Brewing and Must Be
yeah.
Nice and all that. They're great spots, but outside of there, there's a lot of different neighborhoods that are really great to explore. You had mentioned something, and one of the things that I really love about the content that you put out. So, for people out there that are not following Chris already, you need to follow him on Instagram. It's Chris Bushnell Homes. What I like about his content is that he takes a step away from, obviously he has his home buying tips and things like that. But he talks about, what's in the city of Charlotte, cool events that are coming up, those cooler neighborhoods. Um, that's personally, those are my favorite types of content because I like to know, like, I'm a busy person. I don't really get to see all the events that are happening. And so what I like about Chris is that he kind of curates all that. So that's really interesting. So if you haven't already, give Chris a follow, Chris Bushnell Holmes on Instagram. Um, with that said, I mean, I guess we'll kind of wrap it up here. Is there anything you want to tell anybody else? Any home buying tips, things like that?
Not really. I mean, if you want home buying tips, follow me on Instagram, send me a DM. Everyone is different, right? So, I give a lot of general home buying tips on there, but if you're really trying to buy a house, let's have a conversation about it because your situation is different than somebody else's situation. In terms of maybe tips that I can give people is, look for community out here. One
Yeah.
one commonality that you see with a lot of people from Charlotte is really nobody is from here. And when you don't have that sort of commonality, right? It's like, when in your hometown you have the people who you've grown up with and lifelong friends, but you're moving to a new city and you might not necessarily have that. So find some hobbies, try to build a community of people who like the things that you like or are passionate about the things that you like, and really try to build some deep friendships because at the end of the day, community is it's one of those things that keeps us young, keeps us happy, keeps us lively, gives purpose
Oh
into our
yeah.
life, and that's what I would encourage anyone to do.
It's interesting you mentioned community. Harvard actually did a study on the impact. They did a study on what were the key components of a long, healthy, and fulfilling life. And one of them is community. So it's who you surround yourself with, not just how many relationships you have, but the quality of those relationships are important too. And so, as you had mentioned before, there's so many different things in Charlotte that if you're exploring an area and maybe it's just not for you, don't give up on the city. Try to go check out these other places that maybe you haven't explored yet. There's just so many things to do. Chris, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you being our inaugural guest and being the first person that we have on our show. So this is really exciting. Yeah.
Anytime, Austin. Thanks for having me, brother.